welcome to this week's book club episode for Star Wars Dark Disciple by Christie Golden. If you're not familiar with this series, we go through a book, a couple of chapters at a time, really digging into the themes, and if you want, you can join this reading from the beginning by checking out the description. But today we are discussing chapters 35, 36, and 37. And let's go ahead and dive right in. Where we pick up this time, Voss and Ventress are hanging out in a park, a place they've come to meet on the regular, and it's a very Coruscant type thing. It actually kind of had a little bit of a Central Park vibe, but on a much larger scale. It's basically a park that's floating in the middle of this cityscape that creates a little bit of nature in an otherwise urban jungle. And it's in this beautiful place that the two are having a very intense conversation. Voss says that he must be a part of this mission to go and stop Dooku, that it's something that's very important to him, that he would love to see the two of them run off together and live their life, but he's never going to be able to do that if he feels like he has to look over his shoulder for Dooku. Ventress is like, no, let's just go. She's actually let go of her revenge and her hatred of Dooku. Not that she's completely forgiven him or is totally fine with such things, but rather that she just has bigger things to worry about and doesn't want to lose Voss, and that's what's most important to her after already being convinced she had. Now, the conversation that follows is just typical, like, hero not understanding things kind of a conversation, where he's like, I have to go fight Dooku, you have to let me do this, even though you're afraid of what could happen to me, but the moment you're like, no, you need to, you want to come with me, I'm like, no, I can't be worried about you too. You know, it's that very, like, I need to go and do this for myself without realizing what it's going to do to the other person, and the other person being like, if you're going to do it to me, I want to do it too, like, let me be a part of this. And so they're kind of having that talk, although where these chapters go leads me to wonder just what was the ultimate goal of this conversation. But Ventress convinces him to let her come along, which means she joins him by returning back to the Jedi Temple and back to the Jedi Situation Room. And things go exactly as they have up until this point. When she arrives, most of the Jedi Council is cranky, Windu is furious, and Yoda's like, let's just see what happens, because we're just rolling with it at this point. They have an exchange that I find really interesting, because Voss keeps throwing the Council's decisions back at them, right? The idea of, well, we're going to trust Ventress because you guys wanted to trust her in the first place. She's going to come along because you guys pardoned her. And it's fascinating to me because on the one hand, it is a completely legitimate argument to make. They did pardon her. They did ask her to come along from the beginning. But all because of one person, Yoda. So it's like, on the one hand, Voss is correct at throwing all of this back at the Council. On the other hand, the Council has to just be like, well, we didn't want to do it that time either. Like, Voss isn't really making any kind of point or necessarily pointing out any specific hypocrisy, even though it feels like it is, because of course Voss doesn't necessarily know or chooses not to recognize the fact that everyone was doing everything because Yoda was like, guys, we need to do it this way. So yes, he's correct. The Council should chill because they did this before, but the majority of the individuals in the room did not actually feel the way the entity that is the Council feels, and it makes for this really awkward, almost like pseudo-family dynamic of just a bunch of people being really crappy with each other. Ventress looks at the information within the Jedi Situation Room and determines that Christophsis is where Dooku is, and this is very meaningful because if you look at Clone Wars from a release order standpoint, not necessarily a chronological order standpoint, it all started on Christophsis. Christophsis was one of the primary locations for the Clone Wars movie that came out, and of course this book was, at the time, wrapping up Clone Wars plotlines that weren't going to make it into the show such as it was. So it was a way to kind of make the story thematically end where it started, even though that's not ultimately how things went for the Clone Wars as a series. Voss and Ventress go to leave the temple, and Voss is definitely playing some kind of game. He says that he's very certain they're going to be followed, and he won't tell Ventress why, and he won't tell Ventress what he's up to. Ventress is really upset about it, and Voss says this line of like, look, I could throw my Jedi Master back in your face and be cruel, and you could say some other stuff and be cruel to me, and we could stand here being cruel to each other, or we could just trust each other and go with it. Now, so, to jump ahead a little bit, if you've read the chapters along, you know how this goes with Voss, and how he's ultimately helping Dooku. And on the one hand, this conversation makes sense. I mean, they could sit there and second guess each other, but on the other hand, it's like, what couldn't Voss tell Ventress at this point, especially if they think they're followed, especially having this conversation still in the Jedi hangar. Like, if he really thinks this, it's more of a nudge nudge, let's just get on the ship, get to hyperspace, okay, now I can tell you everything, because it's not like the Jedi are going to have the Banshee bugged. So, you know, what is he going for, especially to kind of have this, like, mysterious cloak and dagger thing in the Jedi hangar? There's just a lot of behavior coming out of him, which makes sense considering where the story's about to go. Voss and Ventress arrive at Christophsis, and it's this point where Voss is like, hun, I need you to stay on the ship, and Ventress is just not happy about it, but he's like, one person can sneak in better, you're my way out, I need you on the ship. So again, it's like he convinced her to come and be a part of it just to get the information, but now he's having her just stay on the ship, even though that makes sense. So we're still getting a lot of this, like, in some ways this makes sense, but in a lot of ways it still seems like, why are you doing this? But the funniest part is when we go to Anakin and Obi-Wan, who are arriving on the shuttle, and this is something, I don't know if this is something that Golden came up with for the book, or if this was something that was in the scripts, but this is something I would have loved to see play out on the screen in the Clone Wars, where Anakin and Obi-Wan are on this droid ship that is being piloted by droids, and Anakin is talking through, like, a droid vocabulary, so he sounds like one of the B-1 battle droids. And they're having this conversation back and forth, and even when they get on the ship and they're walking around and Anakin's, like, messing with it, I think it would have been hilarious to see the two of them and just the way Anakin would have been hamming it up. So this was a great moment between those two characters, something I would have loved to see play out on screen, but this is the type of thing that I loved about Clone Wars, that in the middle of all of this stuff, there'd just be, like, this really weird, why am I watching these characters do these things that are so great? It also makes me wonder how this would have gone if Voss and Anakin and Obi-Wan were all working together, but again, we see where the story goes, and I have some thoughts on that as we get to that point. But anyway, they're separated, doing different things on the ship, and Anakin and Obi-Wan actually find Dooku. Rather than going after Dooku immediately, they decide to hold back and just see what happens. Voss is brought to Dooku, sort of as a prisoner, sort of not. It starts to sound like he's a double agent, and he's like, was working to get in with the Jedi, but then he's actually attacking Count Dooku, and he's really making everything about how he wants to get to Dooku's master, the true Lord of the Sith, which is something that everybody in the Clone Wars needs to worry about at this point. Dooku and Voss start fighting. Anakin and Obi-Wan again hang back because Obi-Wan wants to be sure about what's going on, and basically it gets to the point where Voss has Dooku at his mercy, and he goes on about how he is going to use all of this to become the next Sith Lord, and then Dooku's like, no, you and I can fight the next Sith Lord together, and it looks like they're going to be in leagues, and that's when Anakin and Obi-Wan step out. Now, before we get to the next chapter, chapter 37, and you hit this point, it's still not entirely clear what's going on, because Voss knows he's likely being followed. He told Ventress as much. He has to be expecting Anakin and Obi-Wan to be here. And a gambit to try to figure out who Dooku's true master is makes a ton of sense. It's one thing to go after Dooku and think you're going to end the war until you realize that he's actually in service to someone else. And using Dooku to take down that person and then turning on Dooku would effectively end the war, though it would, who knows what state it would have left Voss in spiritually. But it's still, there's a point of Voss could be playing something if he had only been talking to his Jedi friends. It's at this point the Jedi jump out, and Anakin and Obi-Wan, in surprise, are able to capture both Dooku and Voss, arrest them both, and make their way off the ship. Chapter 37 shows us Obi-Wan calling Desh to say that he's coming. Desh is heartbroken to find that Voss has really gone to the dark side. And he's lost Voss all over again, that he had to feel this once and then have the hope that he was back and then to feel it again. Commander Cody talks about a clone named Slick who turned on the other clones. This is something we saw in the episode Hidden Enemy, which chronologically takes place before the Clone Wars movie, but is also kind of tied into that plot line to some extent, is taking place on Christophsis. Not sure that actually matters within the story, but thematically it is interesting. And Cody basically talks about how he understands because he had somebody that he trusted turn traitor on him too. The Jedi arrive, and Anakin and Obi-Wan go off to talk to the Council, and something that's a horrible idea because it's wonderfully convenient. And this comes the point of no return, really, for Quinlan Voss, at least in my opinion. They're walking down the hall, Desh is trying to figure out what's going on, Voss stops to talk to him, and Voss creates a distraction that allows Dooku to escape. clones are killed as a result of this. And yes, clones die on the battlefield, but these are clones in close proximity that didn't necessarily have to die, and they did. Cody's the only one who makes it. And it's at this point that Dash is so convinced that Voss has turned to the dark side that Dash takes it upon himself to kill Voss, and has his, like, special hornet's stinger thing that his species has. If you remember from the very beginning of the novel, where we saw the little girl who was going to do, like, the honor attack and take down Dooku with her stinger, and, like, die with Dooku, and then she failed. Dash is the same species as her, and so it's the same kind of situation that we saw at the beginning of the book. So the beginning of the book showed how evil Dooku was largely unrelated to the overall story, other than setting up the gravity of what's going on, but also sets up this moment here with Dash. Dash is like, I'm going to be the one to take Voss down, I have to do it, and if I have to do it, we're going to go down together. And in a cruel twist of fate, Voss, who knows about what is happening, uses the Force to cause Dash to kill the other Jedi who's with him, guarding Dooku, instead of allowing him to kill Voss. Now, at this point, Voss probably knew Dash was dead anyway. Towards the end of the chapter, Dash's, like, last thought is saying that Voss killed him, and wondering if it was an act of cruelty or mercy. As all of this is going on, Obi-Wan's calling the council, and Yoda says to bring Dooku and Voss to the temple, that things might still go the way of execution, but they should at least talk to them, and things should be done there on Coruscant. After they hang up, Anakin tells Obi-Wan not to blame himself, but of course Obi-Wan does, and they're in the middle of having a really intense conversation when Cody calls and tells them what's going on, and they give chase. The chapter ends with Voss calling Ventress, who has now figured out that Voss isn't even on the ship she was waiting for him on, goes somewhere else, picks him up, and in the middle of trying to trust Voss and seeing what's going on this mission to kill Dooku, Voss shows up with Dooku and is like, LOL, just go with me. And Ventress is like, what the frick is going on? So she's not really sure what's going on, but ultimately decides to trust Voss a little bit longer. So there's a couple of things going on here, right? There's still that last bit of hope of, like, what if Voss is just trying to get to Sidious? What if Voss is still a good guy but playing an even longer game? But if he did that, if Voss is playing some sort of big con just to get to Sidious, he is doing it at the cost of 2 Jedi lives now, in a cruel and personal way with his friend Dash, and several clone troopers that, yes, again, clones die on the battlefield all of the time, but not because of a Jedi ploy. So it doesn't look good for Quinlan Voss at this point, where even if he is a good guy with a game at hand, there's a lot of things going on. This is really a crushing couple of chapters just because of how personal the betrayals are that are going on. The way Dash died, the way Dash killed another Jedi on his way down against his will, the way Ventress is now harboring Dooku, and that Obi-Wan has gone to bat for Voss over and over again, only to keep having these problems. But there's not a lot of point in speculating because the end of the novel is near, and in fact it's very near. Previously, we've been reading like 3 chapters at a time, and that was going to put us at 2 more episodes. But I said last video that I've been having some scheduling issues at work. I'm still kind of dealing with that. So we're actually just going to finish the book for next week. I think it's like 5 chapters, but it's only about 30 pages, so it's not significantly more than we have been reading. And I think at this point, it's a good idea to let's just finish it and call it good. It's going to be better because it's just life reasons. It's time to take a pause. But at this point too, instead of just kind of spiraling back and forth, we can just finish the book and talk about what the book is at its end. So surprise, this is the penultimate episode, which I was not expecting, but let's go ahead and finish the book for next week, and I will get the video to you guys next week as soon as I can. Hopefully Monday, but it may once again not be Monday. But please let me know what you think about the book so far. Follow us on the socials if you're not already, and I will talk to you guys next week.